On our show, I interview and connect with leaders across travel, hospitality, and tourism. We talk leadership in our industry, successes, failures, and everything in between. Today, I'm speaking with Stephanie Smith, CEO of Cogwell Marketing and Analytics. The Travel Leader is brought to you by the Travel Leader Coach, a leadership coaching and content company. We help established, high-performing travel leaders and teams to improve leadership competencies. Learn more at www.thetravelleadercoach.com. Welcome, Stephanie. So great to see you.
Hi there. Happy Thursday.
Yes, Thursday. It's already, this week is flying by, for
This
sure.
year's flying by.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, we're already halfway through February, and it's always such a short month. It's like, then the first quarter is gone. It is so great to see you. We've been chatting a little bit back and forth. I always love to tell people where I've met them, and we met actually on really kind of at the beginning of COVID, by coincidence being on a quarantining call with Corey Falter from Lure out in California. That was super fun. I felt like such a little small fish in a big pond with all these other marketing experts. And I had just signed up for that call on a whim, but it was so energizing to be with you all during such a difficult time for the industry. So glad we had a chance to meet there.
I know. And then we found out that we both live in the Northeast, which is a small, if hospitality is a small world, the Northeast gets even smaller, right? So
Right. Yes, for sure. So let's jump in to get us started today. Could you tell us what is the red thread throughout your travel and hospitality career?
So I think for me, it's the journey that we all are on our own learning journey, right? But it starts with self-awareness. So before you can, lead a team or even bring your best self to work, it's about understanding yourself, what you like to do, what you don't like to do, what you're good at, how you're perceived, and just how you work. But it's all about that journey of self-awareness. That's kind of my red thread of all the things.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And I learned that the hard way when I was starting out on my leadership journey. I thought it was about everybody else. And it turned out to be all about me. And I needed to fix do that inner reflection. So how do you do that inner reflection? What's your process?
Well, one, I think some of this has come with age, but right, and just in terms of over the years, some of the feedback that I got, to your point, it's kind of is it a me thing or is it a them thing? And if you've ever kind of as a leader kind of told somebody, well, I've trained them on this 3 times and they're not getting it, and at that point you have to start to say, is the problem really them at that point? If you keep doing the same things wrong over and over, at what point does it become about you as the teacher, either not understanding how they learn or understanding, how you are teaching it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's something that I've struggled with. But even, in my earlier part of my hotel days, I would get a lot of feedback about, I'm a bull in a china shop, or I'm too rough around the edges. I don't know how to soften, deliveries, things like a lot of that type of feedback that I got that I took very critically early on. But now that I've kind of come full circle, it was just, I think there's a two-way street to communication and kind of learning, pick and choose your battles, like some of those type learnings.
Right. Yeah. So it's almost like you're using that feedback process as like a mirror. It's a mirror for yourself, and listening and taking the good and throwing out the bad, that may not be something you want to take to heart. But yeah, that's important for sure. And there's a lot to be said about taking feedback gracefully, right? For sure.
But I think also in those, when you get that critical feedback earlier in your career, you start to say, what can I do to fix myself? And I think over time, I've decided to, lean into my strengths and then hire people to my weaknesses, or try to find, build diversified teams so that I hire people that do well what I'm just naturally not good at. So, you know,
Yes.
s- so you know, if I know that I've over the 10 years, leading people come off as intimidating, then I need to hire, the first 90 days of onboarding somebody, I try to keep my distance because I'm a lot for people to handle in the beginning, right? So I hire people with different skill sets that are more patient or whatnot to kind of, because I have a lot to offer, but I'm so intense that it's just, most people are,
Right. So
get turned off.
so you give them time to warm up a little
Yeah.
bit before
Yeah.
you come in.
Mhm.
That sounds like a good strategy. Speaking of your teams, I know you have a pretty good sized team for a marketing agency. I really admire that and the growth that you have brought your company to. So how would they describe you as a leader?
So I'm a big believer in DISC. Have you ever taken have you ever taken a DISC profile yourself?
I have not. That's on my list for sure.
So I know there's like a ton of tests out there, but um I like DISC a lot because it's more about the first you understand yourself, and then you understand your team and your peers, and then you understand that one of the things that I learned through DISC is that 75% of people are not like you. So once you foundationally understand that how your brain works, how you communicate, how you process, how you learn, 75% of the people are different than you. So at a foundational level, once you realize that and you understand other people in your team, and they call it a rubber band approach. So if you know where you are on that disc, you have to understand how hard you have to stretch with other people. So if you've ever been in an environment where you're like, I don't get along with this person, we're not on the same page, it's probably just because on a disc assessment, their rubber band is pretty far away from yours. So you
Right.
have to have all those type of people when you're hiring, right? So to build a team, you can't hire all the same people like you. You have to hire people that complement you. Again, going to hiring to your weaknesses, you have to have other people that fall into the other disc categories. So I'm a high D. So if anybody can relate to a high D, that means that I know that I'm what I perceive as being very efficient. It comes across as rude and abrupt sometimes to other people. Um,
Right.
I am a person that I can't digest massive amounts of information. So if somebody sends me like an email with like 5 paragraphs, like I just never get around to reading it because I'm like, so I have to manage people to say, if you need to get in front of me, you need something from me, this is how I need the information sent to me so that I can give you what you need. If you, so in those scenarios, you pick up the phone and call me, because sending me a long email will never get the desired response. So it's about managing them to manage me, if that makes sense. Teaching
Right.
them how to manage upwards so that I can get them what they need.
Right. So, do you use that for like in your team as a way to get to know each other better as a team and to work more effectively together?
Yeah. So on our team retreat the last 2 years, we brought in a disc facilitator
Hmm.
to do workshopping. And it's about, understanding again how to work with other people that have other profiles. Um, so you understand how to get the best out of people and create those relationships, but it's more about the understanding of yourself. And for young people, I find like the earlier like people early in their career, they're not necessarily mature enough to be self-aware. So this is a good
Mm.
learning experience. So a lot of times they'll take all these quizzes and stuff, and they'll read it and they're like, yeah, this is me, but they've never been able to put it into words before. So when they're
Right.
saying, when I need an account manager to work with a coordinator and get the best out of them, this disc allows them to understand how to communicate better and understand how the other person works so that they can get what they need and both people can be successful on both sides. So
Yeah. I'm sure that could be an eye-opening experience for people.
yeah. Well, I tell the story. The first time I did disc was probably close to 15 years ago. And same scenario, I was at an agency, I was director of client services. My director of IT, he and I fought. Like, no, we just, everything, we could not get along ever. and we did this disc, and we both had these aha moments going through this analysis. And he was like, I finally understand you. He was like, you haven't been trying to be a bitch all these years. He's like, this
Right.
is just, but I get it now. And, and I was like, he's like, there's a reason you are, how you are. So he had a self-awareness, one, it taught me about how I'm perceived, but number two, how I deliver and how I communicate. But he was also able to understand my point of view as well. So it was a very reciprocal bonding, and he still does project work for me now 15 years later. I mean, I couldn't have imagined that before. Once we had that, we've got along ever since. So
Wow. Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's really amazing. I mean, it sounds like it kind of, when people can see, okay, and get better understanding, it then turns into maybe some empathy of like, oh wow, I really understand you better, and now I know how to work with you so that we can move forward.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So we're going to go a little deeper here. Who are you at your core beyond titles and the roles you play?
Who am I? That's really, getting into the feels question, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's a piece of me that's I've always been passionate about everything that I do, right? And there's, everything that I do, I have to do it 110%. And I have to, you know, there's almost a piece of like somebody on my team calls me strong and wrong. So even when I'm wrong, I feel, like I will say it with such conviction that everyone's going to
Believe
believe
you.
me, even though even though it could be wrong. Right. So I guess that helps with running a business. But now that I've gotten older and more comfortable in myself and owning this company and being the entrepreneur, I feel like I've finally got to a place where I can be exactly who I want to be,
Mm,
without fear of, being scolded, or without fear of, being criticized. And I think, again, that's something that comes with maturity. Like I can at least feel comfortable, even if you don't like me, you'll probably respect me. And, living this entrepreneur journey, like I'll never work for somebody again. Like, even if I go down
yeah.
in flames and the whole company blows up, like I'll at least know that I did it with, 100% of my heart and gave it everything that I had.
Right.
And,
Yeah.
you know, it's all
So
about being true to yourself now.
right. Yeah. I mean, so driven by passion and living authentically and genuinely.
That's so
Yeah,
much
I
what you said. You put
yeah.
that was really good, Rachel. Have you
Oh,
said that
thanks,
to other people
Stephanie.
before?
No, just reflecting back what you already said. Good
In a much more
things.
simpler and uh, finite way. I like the efficiency of it.
Yeah, yeah. No, those are great qualities to have. Very important in life for sure, and your work for sure. So kind of related to what we've talked about a little bit, but what are some of your other unique strengths and qualities?
I guess I should go back and read my DISC profile. Um,
Right.
but as part of like the other self-awareness journey, I've also believe in I've gotten a lot of coaching, um, more so in my entrepreneur journey. And I think I appreciate it more now, because through every stage of growth, through every stage of personal development, I kind of need that sounding board, of somebody that, isn't family, that isn't close to me from a friend standpoint, um, to be that sounding board to help me kind of walk through the
Right.
issues, like, the perception gaps that might exist and things like that. So one of the other things that I learned, I went through an exercise around conflict resolution,
Mm,
and how do people handle conflict. And again, 4 quadrants. I think I like things with simple. That's why I like DISC. It's 4 quadrants. Your conflict resolution falls into 4 quadrants. So if you get like strengths finders, that's like 26 letters or something, and that's too much for me, right? So I have to,
right.
less is more for me.
You need a consumable model to kind of
Yes.
make it real for you. Yeah.
so that's, but anyways, one of the other things that I learned about myself is that I'm very conflict forward. So I'm very comfortable in conflict.
Mm.
I hit it head on. It's very natural, if anything, almost enjoyable for me, because I see it as a challenge, right? And something that I can overcome. And challenge makes me, um, I thrive in challenge, in a challenge environment.
Uh-huh.
So, but then it's helped me once I understand that what's super comfortable for me. For them, again, 75% of people aren't like you. Most people are not conflict, um, do not lean into conflict. So,
Right. They
it,
run very far
yeah.
away.
So the other methodologies are like collaboration, like trying to find it so both sides win, or they're completely conflict averse and they can't deal with conflict. So it's become a very good support for my team where I'm like, look, if you get into a place of conflict, like bring me in. Like it doesn't bother me whatsoever. If you want to remove yourself from the conflict, I will hit it. If there's a difficult owner, or they're, a difficult GM, whatever, like I will hit it head on. And if they're still, if there's somebody treating our team poorly and I can't resolve it, then I just let them go as a client because I can't have them.
Right.
I can't let the person that can't handle that amount of stress, like if they're just we've had clients be belligerent to us or, very condescending, things like that. But as part of me understanding that conflict is, it's good for me, helps me support my team better.
Yeah, yeah. I can relate to that. I mean, I feel like I don't enjoy conflict so much. I'm probably somewhere in the middle where like I can handle it, but if I could avoid it, I would also avoid it. So, but I can definitely navigate it when I have to, which I think comes from the red hair passion of my fire of myself as well. But I think what's behind that too, or what you need to like drive that ability to address conflict is courage. Um, do you feel yourself as being a courageous person?
Um, I think yes and no. I mean, I think there's a proponent of like entrepreneurism and has if taught me anything, it's taught me how to fail. And before, I was always afraid to fail. So I was, so now just, the amount of failures that I've had have taught me to be a better person all around and also be accepting of other people failing, which I wasn't for a long time. Um, you know, the courage that it takes to go out on your own. Um, I don't think you ever know exactly what you're getting into until you learn all of the
Right.
things the hard way, right? There's a idealistic of what you think, going out on your own or being a consultant or, as a coach, like you
Yeah.
go into it and you're like, oh, I can do these things. Other people do these things. And once you get into it, it's never that black and white. Um,
Right.
I also believe in a fake it till you make it mentality. So the, you know, for a long time, in full transparency, I didn't have this big team, but on my website, I made it look like I had a big team, but it was really just a bunch of contractors. Now everybody on my team is full time and I can provide benefits. So I feel like I've kind of grown into what I was trying to
Yeah.
fake it for a long time. Um, but I don't know. I think courage comes in a lot of different forms for a lot of different people. And what's, easy or hard for me might be the opposite for somebody else. So,
Right. Yeah. Well, the other thing that comes to mind from what you talked about is being able to face conflicts, is building a foundation of resilience. Because if you're in that conflict, you may come out, with a fail, you know, potentially. But your ability to bounce back afterwards and knowing that you can do that because of past experiences, helps you to be able to face it when you have to, I can imagine.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think you can't change your conflict resolution style, but you have to understand how to manage through conflict given your style. So once you've understand from a self-awareness what your style is, then you have to be able to say, how do I manage through knowing my style of conflict resolution? I still have to manage through the conflict, right? I still have to come
Right.
to an end. So what does that look like? And part of that stuff, once you know how you handle it, and then hopefully you can figure out how the other person on the other side of the fence handles it, and then you can work together through it.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a test that you can take. I think it's like the Thomas Kilman or Thomas Kleinman, something like that, test that you can take to understand your conflict.
Oh, I'll have to check that out. I'll have to put that in the show notes as a good. Yeah, these are all great suggestions for assessments. And definitely goes back to that idea of self-awareness. It's really critical in leadership, no doubt. So, what are some stories or experiences that have shaped who you are today?
Um, well, those are those defining moments that we talk about, right?
Right.
I mean, I say that I'm in my, second career. So obviously starting the company was a defining moment, but it's been a long defining moment because I still like it still defines me. I mean, I can tell the story of COVID that everyone has a COVID story, but I had ramped up business and I lost I think I had 30 projects. I lost all but one within a week. So I
Wow.
lost every client that I had and I had to start from scratch. Um,
Wow.
but I mean, everybody's got a COVID story, right? So I don't think that mine's necessarily any different. But I do question if my growth trajectory from a company standpoint would be different if it wasn't for COVID, obviously. Um,
Right.
the I don't know. There's different things that stand out in my career with that DISC assessment 15 years ago was one of them. But I used to have this early in my hotel days. I had a boss that I despised, and I think she despised me, you know, just the same, or at least that's how I felt, right? Whether or not it was
Right.
perceived or reality. And now I feel like women do a better job of uplifting themselves, but I was one of the only female managers in that whole team.
Right.
And I had a female supervisor, and I thought that she was hard on me because I was a female. I don't know if that was true or not. But she made me. Uh, I'd been with Hyatt for 7 years. I loved the company. I drank the Kool-Aid, and when she came in, she made me hate my job. She made me hate my career. She made me hate everything that I'd come to love.
Yeah.
And I felt like even if she told me to do these 3 things right, and I did those 3 and 3 more, I would still fail in her eyes. And I decided to quit Hyatt. I took the first job that landed in my lap. I took a 30% pay cut just to walk away, just to get out from under it.
Right.
I'd made a very rash decision just to, run from, misery. And I guess it taught me, they always say, I mean, I appreciate all the uplifting, like, let's get a mentor, everybody have a mentee, that whole thing. But there's a piece of it that kind of rubs me the wrong way because, one, I think you can find a mentor, either spoken or unspoken, in pretty much any environment if you choose to lean into it. But on the other side, I feel like you learn just as much from a bad supervisor as you do from somebody
Right.
that's a mentor. But you have to, it's very easy to get into a negative space and not know how to get yourself out. So I reflect on that time to really say, that negativity affected me outside of work. It affected me at work. It affected my relationships. It affected, so if you're in that place, like, do whatever you can to, like, realize what it's doing and the waterfall effect that negativity has in your whole life.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, and my husband would say you would come home from work every day and just bitch and complain like you were miserable. But it took me, it only once I removed myself and I was like, oh my God, like, what was I doing? He was like, I didn't even want to talk to you at dinner because you were just, like,
Yeah.
spewing negativity all the time. But
Yeah.
it's taught me a lot about what type of leader I wanted to be,
Yeah.
and what I
Yeah.
didn't want to be, I guess, more than anything.
Right. Yeah. No, I really appreciate you sharing that story because, I think it happens, unfortunately, to a lot of people where they get stuck somewhere and, aren't able to see the possibilities outside of their existing circumstances. And, no one deserves to be treated like that. And that's really what has led to a lot of workplace engagement problems and holistic well-being issues with staff members. But realizing ultimately you do have a choice, and it may not always look pretty at first. Like you said, you had to take a 30% pay cut just to get out of that space. But ultimately, you're making a choice towards something else, which is, a better life for yourself. Because life's too short, right? To live under those circumstances. But yeah, we grow from those kinds of things, and now you're probably a better leader because you experienced that, and have something, what you want to do differently with your own team.
I think how it's changed me now is like I have a policy. Like if there's ever a point that you don't like working for me or this isn't the right fit, like I'll find you a way. Just because you're not the right fit for me doesn't mean that you can't thrive under somebody else. Like I know that I can be a difficult pill to swallow. So it's fine. If you don't thrive under
Sure.
me, like let's find you the right place. And I'll transition people out. I'll recommend them for jobs just because um and I'm like, it's an open door policy. So if there's ever, I mean, you kind of learn over time when somebody isn't happy. So I'm pretty quick to be like, hey, what's going on? Is it something, like we got to either
Right.
move past this? So I tell everybody, if we have a yearly review when you get your raise and you're blindsided by anything, then I haven't done my job as a leader. Like we should
Right.
always know where you stand. And,
Yep.
like I've had somebody work for me and she came and she's like, this isn't working for me. I said, all right, let's transition you out. We had an open plan. She's like, I don't know how long it's going to take me to get another job. And I said, well, just give me time to, do the transition. And it took her 6 months, but that's fine. Like it worked for me. It
Right.
worked for her. We had a policy
Right.
where, like I had a plan so that when she did pull the trigger that I had, could work through it and it worked better for both of us that way. But
Right.
it's a hard
Well, yeah.
conversation for a lot of people to have to be like, because they take it personally or something, and I don't know why they do.
Right. Well, that just speaks to the idea of setting the expectation of open and honest communication. I mean, nobody benefits from walking on eggshells and avoiding the issues. Um, so that's great that you have that outlook on things.
But if people's method is avoidance, and it's hard to get some of those people to communicate with me because I'm like, tell me what it is,
Oh,
and they're like,
right.
I'm not comfortable, and then you know,
Oh, I've dealt with that in my hotel business with employees for sure, and it's yeah, you really pull your hair out with that sometimes. So can you just to switching gears a little bit, can you describe a time when you have felt most alive or fulfilled?
um, outside of conquering a big hike, summiting 14ers and getting that high. Um, you know, at work there's that sales high of getting a new contract signed. Um, and I'm trying to think if I have stories about employee growth because I've
Well, I think even that, I mean, conquering a mountain is also metaphorical, right? I mean, what is it about that makes you feel alive?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like there's I guess it's just part of my mentality of pushing boundaries. So there's a piece of like pushing your boundaries at work, but there's also a piece of like pushing your physical boundaries because you don't, just to see what you're capable of. Um, I remember I used to be into bike riding and road biking. My husband will tell the story. We were doing a 24-mile climb on the bike, And unfortunately, I just wasn't physically in shape enough to do it, but I tried. But I
Yeah.
mean, 2 miles from the top, I passed out on the bike
Oh
and,
my
uh,
god.
like, throwing up, like, dizzy
Oh,
spells, like, they had to, like, go get the car, and, I assume that was a combination of severe hydration and just, you know but, you never know what
right.
your body can handle until you actually put it to the test. Um, uh, Maybe not super safe, but, know your boundaries, but I think a lot of people working to become either complacent or safe, when it comes to either work or personal, physical, and
Yep.
it's good to
Yeah.
test those boundaries.
No, so I mean that I mean I love that you mentioned this experience because it is a leadership story. And the any time that we can push ourselves to that next level, because often what happens is we hold ourselves back because of fear or self-doubt and thinking, "Oh, I've never done that before. Why would I be able to do it now?" There's this great book I just read called The Big Leap, which talks about the upper limit problem, which is basically, I mean, we put self-imposed limits on ourselves. And so climbing that mountain and doing that bike ride, like every time you're able to get to past your upper limit, you've actually just expanded your upper limit and your capabilities. Um, and that's something that leaders have to do all the time, every day.
I'll have to read that book because I struggle with that on the business side because people are like, what's your goal for the company? And I was like, I don't know. Every year I knock out the ceiling of what I imposed, and then it's like, okay, what's next? Like bump it up. Um, so I struggle with like being able to see far enough into the future to create a plan against it because I didn't think I would ever be where I am. So how do I like envision that? So it's something I work through with my coaches about trying to envision bigger things because
Yes.
yeah.
I mean I can so relate to that because there's so many times I've thought, well, yeah, how could I achieve more than this? Or, I'm just a small town girl from Vermont. And that I'm putting my own upper limit. So I highly recommend the book, The Big Leap, to anyone listening. It's really pushes you, it's very inspiring, pushes you to kind of think about what that higher limit could be for yourself or no limit. Actually, my word this year is limitless. Um,
Ooh.
so that is why I read this book. Was to kind of help inspire that journey for myself.
I
So,
have to check it. I love good books. We actually read books as a team from time to time. So we read
oh, that's great.
um I usually choose business fables so that are short, even if people don't like to read, it's something they could sit down and read
Right.
from, in maybe a 2-hour time block if they really
Yeah,
put their mind to it, or at least come on audiobook. Um, those have
that's
been
a great
really
tip.
beneficial. I'd
Yeah.
recommend The Energy Bus. Probably read The Energy Bus.
No, I haven't.
Oh, that's that's a really good one and a very easily digestible one. And then the other one we read last year was I'll have to put it in the show notes. The naked something. But it was a business fable too. It was
Yeah,
really, really good.
good suggestions. I'll definitely put those in. What do you stand for no matter what?
Um, a learning or growth mindset. One of
Mm,
our hashtag in our newsletter is always be learning. Um, I, t- I tell people it has to be part of our internal culture about learning from each other. So if you learn something, teach it to somebody else, but also externally teaching the industry. So we don't like have gated content. We publish blogs all the time. Um, but I have like this personal thing about teaching the industry about changing the mindset about what digital marketing is and how it relates to commercial strategy and revenue management and sales. So, um, learning has to be at the foundation of everything, but it extends into my personal life too, like how I raise my son. So, what did you, focusing on what does he learn and how to give him different life experiences so that he can be a more well-rounded, citizen, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that kind of relates to another question that I have, is the impact you want to have on the industry. And I just identified something about, what you're trying to educate about. Could you say more about that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when you look at the three-legged stool of commercial strategy, sales, revenue management, marketing's like the kind of third, you know, not new but newest of the triad. And there's a prevalent mentality that, either marketing is just creating social content or marketing is just like running OTA ads and getting return on ad spend. But it's so much more. It's more about understanding that whole customer journey and all those different touch
Mm,
points and how we can have that impact all the way through. And then how does it really, like, at what point does revenue management, no offense to any revenue managers out there, but it definitely comes in at that point of, transaction pretty late in the game when somebody's already chosen where they want to go, chosen where they want to stay, already
right.
picked their dates. And now they're like, okay, now, what is it, the rate that we're going to choose and transact at? And
Yeah.
trying to make change to that, start so much earlier in the process and understanding how we can influence that customer journey a lot sooner, than how we mistrain owners and operators to think and act about when
Right.
it comes to marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I call myself like a bootstraps, I don't know if that's the right word, but bootstraps marketing um student. Like I didn't go to school for marketing, and I've really owning a hotel and a small hotel and not having a marketing person, I had to do it all myself. So I just did it by reading and making mistakes, experimenting and all of that. And that was finally the realization I came to, was that marketing is about really that whole customer experience before they've even looked at your website,
Oh,
like
it's happened so long before they get to your website. Yeah.
right, like it's about who they are as people and what their needs are and how do you meet their needs. And yeah, so there's a lot of education that can certainly be done about that for sure. um any of us who've on a daily basis been pitch slapped on LinkedIn, for example, um, wish we could teach that lesson to them.
I know. I did
Yeah,
a presentation a few years ago that return on ad spend is like the worst metric, for the worst KPI that we've taught everybody to ask for. Um,
yeah,
and it was to the theme of the Titanic. So it was a storyline um, around that. It's a 6-minute presentation, but we'll drop that in the show notes because it really is about, you know, we've done it to ourselves. To owners are like, well, how much, we ran this ad, how much money did it make? Well, that one ad isn't the only thing that impacted that revenue, right? That one single
right,
instance, was not the only thing that they looked at in that entire customer journey, right? So
right. Yeah,
everybody's
for
on their
sure.
own everybody's on their own learning journey. I feel like I probably spend 50% of my time still educating, so you have to meet people where they are in that learning journey and, try to pick them up there and educate them throughout that process.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So back to you and your leadership skills. Which is a leadership skill that you most rely on to lead your people and team?
Hmm. I should probably ask them that question. When I went through Castell, all your employees and other people that know about you did a questionnaire so you could understand
Right.
if your perception and your reality were the same, um, which I thought was interesting. The leadership quality I rely most on, or that
Yeah, I mean, like, what do you find yourself like leaning into the most? And yeah, that something that you feel like is like, if I do nothing else in my leadership, this is the skill that really helps me um lead my people.
Well, I think one of the other quizzes that we took as a team that we discussed was understanding what your motivators are. Like there's a couple of free
Mm-hmm.
quizzes that breaks out what motivates people. Uh, and mine was, I don't remember what the name of it was, but it was about liking a challenge. Like I have to consistently be challenged so that I can learn and grow and thrive. Like I can't, if I was in a place where I did the same thing every day, I would be like bored out of my mind. Right. So how that helps me, I mean, I look at it when I'm managing the team on an individual basis. You can tell when someone, gets comfortable, so to speak. So, you know, having conversations about, pushing them outside of their comfort zone, giving them
Mm,
challenges. And for each person, that looks a little bit differently. Um, but like I just had one of my employees that, we have there's a rising leader council, and she's like, didn't really see herself that way. And I said, well, it's time that we put you into this place where you can, interact with other people and kind of, step it up. And it was um, uncomfortable for her, but it was a moment of growth. I said, we got to lean into this. So, based on where she wants to be, in the future and what she wants to do, I was like, we're going to get you there. Then we got to start putting you in different circumstances. Um, but different people see challenges different ways. You talk about that fear component. We've also had conversations about what are people afraid of at work? Like
mm-hmm.
what's your biggest fear? And some of them are in my mind, like, not being prepared to answer a client's question on the phone. Like that would never even occur to me to be fearful of. So,
Right.
understanding those certainly comes into it when you try to set a challenge up for somebody, when you try to
Yeah.
establish what that challenge is together.
Yeah. It seems like where you come in that is you using the ability, like you're believing in people and their capabilities and inspiring them to take the next step. How does that resonate?
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I think I don't know, I guess you're either on one side of the fence or the other. So I either believe in you and I see the value and I push you to be better. And yeah, there's faith there. But on the other side, if you fail me too many times and
Yeah, you're like, you're done.
like,
You're cut from the team.
yeah, and transition you to somebody, a different style manager.
Right. Right.
um, yeah.
Yeah. But there's something to that, like there comes a time when you just can't string people along forever. It's just not, it doesn't sound like that would be in integrity with yourself and your standards, and no one grows and learns from that. Um so that's tough for someone to go through if they don't make the cut, but they might find a better place and be the perfect fit for somebody else, like you've mentioned. So,
Yeah. I mean, that's very eloquently said, but but you've been around long enough where, and same thing, like the people are, that I jive with and that I've grown, like I've hired multiple times, like at least for the people that work for me now or do contract have worked for me in other roles. It's just a matter of finding the right time and the right place to bring them along with me. Cause, once we find that level of, you know, if once you understand the style, then, you're in it for life, so to speak. And,
right.
mentoring and supporting those people throughout their whole career is important to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Wonderful. Well, we're almost at the end of our time together, but I have one more question for you. And this is kind of relates to the upper limit problem. What vision would you pursue if you had everything you needed to succeed right now?
Um, I would probably have more work-life balance and spend more time in the outdoors, off the grid, camping and hiking, um, on the personal side. And then, my other vision related to my earlier vision with the education, I'm trying to do that with software and AI. So if I had more money, And I'm not asking for investors because I can't be beholden to somebody. But if I had unlimited
Right.
funds, I would accelerate the development of that. Um, you know, using data to build forward-looking marketing plans that encompass the entire customer journey.
I love that. That's great. Those are great. Those are two really great visions. And yes, I highly recommend getting out for more hiking. I'm right there with you. But yeah, it helps that I'm living in an area with mountains. Do you get out to some trails around you where you're living?
I mean, I'm in South Shore, Mass, and it's pretty not much going on
Right.
here at
Yeah.
all. So I have to go up to like New Hampshire or Maine to make it happen. So it's
Yeah.
the whole thing.
Right. Yeah. Well,
But when I
and
was in
I
Colorado,
have
it
a
was in my
feel.
backyard. I could go 10 minutes and three of the best hiking in Western Colorado were within 15 minutes of my house. So I could go for afternoon hikes, spoiled.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like that'll be in your future again somewhere.
Well, you never know.
No, you'll have to come up to Vermont. Now that we share a friend up
I
here,
know. I do need to
we
get up
got
there for
we'll
sure.
have to get together and have a hike up here in our mountains.
That sounds awesome. I like it.
Awesome. Well, it has been such a pleasure